Right now, the most popular way to boost a hormone called GLP-1 costs about $1,300 a month, comes in weekly injections, and has the entire wellness internet panicking about side effects. But here's what no one else is telling you. Your body already knows how to make GLP-1, and the foods that turn on that production line have been on the Ayurvedic plate for over 2,000 years. If you've been watching the Ozempic conversation, feeling either curious, confused, or honestly a little betrayed by your own appetite, you are not alone. So many of you have been asking what to actually eat to support natural GLP-1, and I totally get it. The answer matters more right now than it has in a long time. So if you're new to this channel, I'm Tara Dawn. I'm a yoga teacher, health coach, and an Ayurvedic health counselor, and this whole channel sits at the place where gut health, ancient wisdom, and modern science meet. So here's exactly what this video is covering today. What GLP-1 actually does in your body, 5 specific foods that wake up your body's own GLP-1 production, the Ayurvedic angle on bitter taste that modern science is finally catching up to, real peer-reviewed research, not vibes, and exactly how to put these on your plate this week. And I'll tell you up front, I'm not anti-Ozempic. This isn't that conversation. This is for the rest of us and for the ones who want to support what their body is supposed to be doing on its own. So let's get into it. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. And I know the name sounds a little clinical, but the way it works in your body is actually amazing. After you eat, specialized cells in the lining of your gut called L cells release GLP-1 into your bloodstream. And GLP-1 does 3 things at once. It tells your pancreas to release the right amount of insulin. It slows down how quickly your stomach empties so that you stay satisfied for longer. And it sends a signal to your brain that says, we're done eating now. And when this hormone is working well, you get steady energy after meals. You feel full at the right time. Blood sugar stays in a comfortable range, and cravings don't run the show. But when it's sluggish, which happens with chronic stress, ultra-processed foods, low fiber, low bitter taste intake, you get the opposite. Constant hunger, the 3 p.m. crash, the I just ate but I'm starving feeling that drives you back into the pantry. And here's the part that no one explains clearly. Drugs like Ozempic and Mounjaro are GLP-1 receptor antagonists. That means that they mimic this hormone your body already makes. They flood the receptors with a synthetic version that lasts longer than your own does. And that's not really bad, but it's not magic either. What it tells us is that GLP-1 is doing real metabolic work, and the question becomes, how do you support your own production naturally? And that's where food comes in. And the answer is way more interesting than just eat more vegetables. In the Charaka Samhita, the foundational Ayurvedic text written somewhere around 200 BCE, there's a teaching about the 6 tastes: sweet, sour, salty, pungent, astringent, and bitter. Of the 6, bitter, or tikta rasa in Sanskrit, was considered the most powerful for kindling Agni, the digestive fire, and for clearing ama, which is the metabolic buildup that the texts describe as the root of all disease. And for thousands of years, Ayurvedic physicians said, begin every meal with the bitter taste, not because it tastes good, but because of what it did metabolically. And for most of that time, the rest of the world looked at this advice as poetry or spiritual esoteric stuff, folk wisdom, or just tradition. Then in the last 15 or so years, modern science finally caught up. Researchers found something almost embarrassingly aligned with what the ancient rishis described. Your gut has bitter taste receptors, and they're called TAS2R receptors, the same family of receptors that sit on your tongue. And when you eat something bitter, these gut receptors trigger the L cells to release GLP-1. What the ancient doctors called tikta rasa awakens Agni, modern researchers now describe as bitter taste receptor activation triggers GLP-1 secretion. Same exact conversation, 2 different languages, over 5,000 years apart. And that's the foundation under everything I'm about to tell you. Now for the foods. The first one is the easiest. Bitter greens, like arugula, dandelion greens, mustard greens, watercress, and endive. Most Americans eat exactly 0 bitter greens in a typical week. Spinach, romaine, iceberg, all sweet or neutral. None of them are activating those gut bitter receptors. A 2024 study published on PubMed looked at people with different sensitivities to a specific bitter compound and found that those with more sensitive TAS-R238 bitter taste receptors had significantly lower postprandial glucose responses, independent of their diet, independent of their lifestyle. So in other words, the more responsive your bitter machinery, the better your blood sugar handling after a meal. And one of the things that wakes up that machinery is actually using it. A small handful of arugula or dandelion greens before your main meal, or layered into your salad, or wilted into eggs in the morning with olive oil and a little salt. You don't need a giant portion. You just need consistency. 2 or 3 times a week is the difference between I never eat bitter greens and my gut is starting to remember how to do this. And the second one is the deep cut. Bitter melon. If bitter greens are the gateway, bitter melon is the masterclass. In Ayurvedic medicine, this is one of the most studied plants for what we now call blood sugar dysregulation, used for over 2,000 years before insulin shots existed. And what's wild is the mechanism. Bitter melon doesn't just trigger GLP-1 through one pathway, it triggers it through 3. The first, the same TAS2R bitter receptor pathway. 2, a compound called malmor-dicoxide D activates a bile acid receptor called TGR5, which independently triggers GLP-1 secretion. And the third, a compound called parantin, actually inhibits DPP4, the enzyme that breaks down GLP-1, once it's released. So it makes more GLP-1 and keeps the GLP-1 you already have around longer. A 12-week randomized clinical trial in Korean adults with prediabetes, published in 2023, looked at bitter melon supplementation and found measurable improvements in glucose metabolism and insulin resistance. So, how to practically use this information? Stir fry with onions and turmeric, or in soup with mung beans. If the taste is too much for you starting out, and it definitely might be because it's pretty bitter, there are standardized extracts in capsule forms, 200 to 500 milligrams, that work well too. And listen, if you want to go deeper on how Ayurveda thinks about all of this, especially the Agni piece, I made a full video on the gut health framework that Ayurvedic physicians have been using for 5,000 years. I'll link it at the end. But for now, back to the foods. Number 3, lentils. Lentils, beans, chickpeas, mung, the entire legume family. The mechanism here is different from the bitter receptor pathway, but the destination is the same. Beans and lentils are loaded with soluble fiber. Your small intestine doesn't digest most of it. It travels down to your colon, where your gut bacteria ferment it into compounds called short-chain fatty acids: acetate, propionate, and butyrate. A landmark study published in the journal Diabetes in 2012 by Tolhurst and colleagues showed exactly how this works. Short-chain fatty acids bind to a receptor called FFAR2, which sits on the same L cells in your gut. FFAR2 activation triggers GLP-1 release. So when you eat lentils, you're not just getting protein, you're feeding your microbiome the exact fuel that it needs to manufacture GLP-1 triggers for hours after the meal. Most people I see are eating lentils about once a month. The Ayurvedic plate has them daily. The Mediterranean plate has them daily. There's a reason both of these eating patterns get studied for metabolic health, and it isn't just olive oil. Half a cup daily if you can. A simple mung dal with cumin, ginger, and turmeric is one of the most metabolically friendly meals on the earth, and it costs about $1 or $2 to make. Food number 4 is oats, but specifically real oats. Steel cut or old-fashioned oats. Oats contain a specific kind of soluble fiber called beta-glucan. Beta-glucan is unusual because it forms a viscous gel in your gut, and that gel slows the absorption of glucose, which prevents the spike and crash pattern. And then, like with lentils, your bacteria ferment it into short chain fatty acids, which then go on to trigger GLP-1. The packets of instant oats with sugar and dehydrated berries don't really count because the processing breaks down to beta-glucan structure. You want the oats that still look like whole grains. Have warm, savory oats in the morning, cooked in water, finished with a little ghee, a pinch of salt, fresh black pepper, and turmeric. And I know that it sounds wrong if you're used to oats with brown sugar. Try it once. Your stomach will be completely different at 11 a.m. And the last food is turmeric, and specifically the active compound curcumin. A 2012 study in Molecular Nutrition and Food Research by Cato and colleagues showed that curcumin directly stimulates GLP-1 secretion from L cells, working through 3 different cellular signaling pathways simultaneously. Then in 2018, a clinical trial published in Scientific Reports gave healthy adults curcumin before a meal and tracked their postprandial glucose response. Glucose was significantly lower at 60 minutes by about 60% compared to placebo. The important thing about turmeric though, 1, curcumin needs help to absorb. You need black pepper, which contains piperine and fats. That's why golden milk has all 3. That's why turmeric and dal with ghee works. That's why a turmeric pill with no piperine and no fat is largely a waste. And 2, sprinkling it on a salad isn't doing what you think it's doing. It needs heat. Cook with it. 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon daily in real food. That's the dose that's showing up in the research. So let me show you what this looks like in a real day. Not a perfect day, but a real one. It's a breakfast. Savory oats with turmeric, ghee, black pepper, and a soft-boiled egg on top. That's 3 of the 5 foods in one bowl. For lunch, a small mung dal with rice, a side of arugula or dandelion greens dressed with olive oil and lemon, and a sliced bitter melon. Stir fry it if you have it that week. That's all 5. Dinner, keep it simple. Soup with lentils or a roasted root vegetable with curry spice blend that includes turmeric and pepper, and bitter greens on the side. So the key isn't perfection. The key is that bitter is in the day somewhere. Soluble fiber is in the day somewhere. Turmeric is in the day somewhere. You're just nudging the system, not overhauling the whole thing. And this isn't really a 30-day reset. It's a way of actually eating that you can sustain over a long period of time, which is the only way any of this matters. So the 5 foods: bitter greens, bitter melon, lentils, beans, real oats, and turmeric. They all wake up GLP-1 through pathways your body has been using as long as your body has existed. So the video that I want you to watch next is the gut health framework Ayurveda built 5,000 years ago. Because if these foods are the fuel, Agni is the fire that burns them. Without a strong Agni, none of these foods are landing in the way that they should. And if you want my full Agni plate guide, the exact framework that I use with clients to assemble plates that support GLP-1 and digestion at every meal, it's totally free, linked in the description, no strings attached. So if this is kind of your thing, gut health, Ayurveda, real research with no fluff, I would love to have you here. And tell me down below, which of the 5 foods are you starting with this week? I read every single one. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.